Welcome to Positive Recovery MD. If you're listening, chances are you want to create happiness around you and thrive in your life. We're glad you're here and you've come to the right place. This podcast will inspire and motivate you to not merely survive your recovery journey, we'll give you the tools to build or strengthen your foundation to thrive and flourish in your life. Each week, we'll come together as a community to have authentic conversations around addiction, recovery, and what matters. Growth and progress, not perfection. All while developing positive habits for you to utilize in your life. To learn more, please visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to receive the daily positive interventions that we'll review, as well as gain access to exclusive Positive Recovery content available only to Positive Recovery MD listeners. All right, let's get started.
Hello and welcome, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, to another installment of Positive Recovery MD with your single host today, out of the ordinary. It's Dr. Jason Powers, and we have an awesome guest, Cio Hernandez. Hello, Cio. Thanks for joining with us.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Powers, and for your audience. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So Cio is the Chief Executive Officer and President of Be It Foundation. And I love this. Like when you go to the website and you click on About Us, and under her name, it says, I love helping people reach their goals by helping them believe in themselves. I started helping people reach their goals way before I was a professionally trained therapist. She has a PhD, right? Mm-hmm. Yes. So she's originally from all over Texas and is honored to work to provide opportunities to lift South Texas residents to their highest potential. I'm going to read it now because that's really a lot easier. I've helped start and run all sorts of projects and programs working with the homeless, disabled, health, education, equity, and inclusion for communities of color, aging, youth, interfaith, sports, children's running clubs, immigrants, mental health, public policies, violence prevention, opioid reduction, and even pioneered healthy efforts for county fairs. Wow. That's how I know. That's how I know that if we set the right goal, we can reach that goal, even if it takes some time to get there. In my spare time, as if she has any, I like visiting my son in college, traveling and running half marathons around the world with my friends and family. So that's awesome. There's a lot there. I can't believe you do all that. But usually people on this podcast, not always, are in recovery. And so it's a very easy, hey, tell me about your life, what happened, what it was like, and what it's like now. But instead, I'd like to know, kind of tell us where you were from, where you grew up. Yeah, if you were all over Texas, maybe just like the key cities or key places. And as you matured, sort of, how did you get into this sort of saintly work that you do?
That's a kind question. Well, so I'm originally from Texas, and we left Texas when I was 8, moved to Chicago, where my dad did another residency there. He was in the public health service in Texas. We moved from Chicago to California because 2 years of shoveling snow was plenty. And my parents live in Southern California, and I live in the Bay Area. So I'm in Northern California, and I run the foundation from California, where I have a private practice, and I'm licensed in California, Texas, and in Hawaii. Both of my parents are Save the Worlders. My dad is a doctor who has dedicated his entire career to basically taking care of the lowest income members of our communities. And my mom was a second grade teacher. So that comes with a lot of social work as well, right? So making sure that the kids in your classroom have enough food to eat, and that if they come from not so great family systems, that children know that there's at least one place where they are cared and loved for. So that's where my roots in being able to do this work comes from. And I feel like as we get to it later in the positive intervention, that is one of the spiritual gifts that I get, is to be able to do that work, to do this work.
So just your parents having role models like that. Yeah, I could totally see that. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have 2 younger sisters. We have, you mentioned that I'm not in recovery. And I would say that every single one of us is in some form of recovery from something. And even if it's just that this part of the brain, which is associated with obsessive compulsive disorder, just spins and spins and spins, we are all dealing with something. So, or the anxiety of COVID, right? Like whatever, right. There are plenty of people in my family that have struggled with mental illness. And so my whole life and career has been making mental health a priority and emotional well-being and decreasing mental health stigma so that we can just be who we are and be free to be. That's
awesome. So tell me then about this Be It Foundation that you are CEO and president of. Like, what is it exactly? And how does somebody kind of get your services or hire you, or how does it work?
Sure. There are 4 areas of our foundation. So the first is that we do scholarships they're need-based scholarships, where we will invest in a student over their entire educational career. So you don't have to be scrounging to figure out, how am I going to survive next year? That you just know that you're going to have up to $5,000 paid every year to make sure that you can get closer to your graduation goal. So if people want to do a bachelor's or master's or a PhD, they may be in our lives, in our Be It Scholar lives for the next 12 years. And that's awesome. We just recruited our first 8 Be It Scholars, and I'm super excited to launch that and to meet them personally at the gala in July. It's July 13th. If anybody is interested in attending, I would love to have you there.
Where's it going to be?
It's going to be at Laredo College. And feel free to email me. I would love to invite you personally, Dr. Powers. But if others are interested in attending either virtually and in person, just shoot me an email at cio@beitfoundation.org.
Easy enough. That's awesome. So your very first 8 ever for the foundation?
We just launched this last year. So we turn in our 501c3 paperwork to the IRS in October, and we're still waiting for that. But in the meantime, we're giving out money to just start doing the right thing. So then the next area of the foundation is emergency funding, where we've been working with a couple of providers that already do emergency funding in San Antonio and in Laredo. And so they administer the funds for us to people who need access to basic needs: food, shelter, clothing, basics, utilities. Then we've got the third area of the foundation is basically about helping professionals reach higher professional goals to be able to access more and better and higher and great. So what we noticed is in South Texas, there isn't a whole lot of access to trauma-informed care, and hardly anybody does EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing.
And explain that briefly for people that don't know what it means.
Yeah, so EMDR is it's an 8-phase technique that helps you take memories that we've stored inappropriately in our trauma brain, moves it into the working memory. Then we make a new relationship to those pictures, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, body sensations. And then we basically overload the working memory by making you do other things at the same time that you're thinking about that in the here and now. So it's either following your eyes back and forth, or having you tap different parts of your body, or listening to something, either alternating in your different ears, or even just something that is intrusive and annoying, or even pleasant, but something that you can overload the working memory, or even moving your body at the same time that you're doing this, in order to make a new relationship to previously distressing material. We can hopefully get you to a place where you're no longer as distressed, and you start to feel and believe things that are positive about yourself, totally aligned with your goals, right?
Cool. Thanks for that tangent. That was great.
Yeah. So we are going to be training 20 providers this year in South Texas, from San Antonio and Laredo, at Laredo College in October. If that's something that's interesting to your providers in South Texas that listen to you or are part of your work, please, again, feel free to email me, and I'm happy to send an application if you want to be one of those trained providers. The fourth area of the foundation is mental health stigma. And that's how I got to you. We are trying really hard to be able to work with different professionals and community folks to be able to start just having frank conversations about what mental health looks like in our communities, that it's everywhere, it's normal, and that it's actually a good thing for us to be able to talk about, not a secret.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, man, there's so much about your world that is making my wheel spin. And I guess like a couple things, I guess just one thing at a time, and my brain thinks so fast, I need to slow it down. But speaking about your work with opioid reduction. And yeah, I mean, like it's sort of overused at this point that there's an opioid epidemic. And then COVID hits and okay, at least we have a new epidemic. But there's still this opioid problem. It's rampant. And I know that people who are of color or low income have less access to medications like Suboxone. I mean, if you're white, you're more likely to get medication-assisted treatment than if you're not. So tell me about like that work, and have you had success in decreasing opioid use, or sort of what are you doing in that area?
Yeah, so that came from the work when I was doing county health policy work in Marin County, which is the richest and whitest county in the state. Well, I don't know if it's the whitest, but it is definitely the richest as far as California goes. And we have in Marin County, there's more than 76% white, and then everybody else falls into all the other diversity groups. So the reason why I say that is exactly to your point, that opioid use is more associated with particular demographics. And access is interesting because most people in Marin actually have health insurance. So some of the very easy things that we have done and asked people to do is just clean out your medicine cabinet. Just start there. Take anything that was prescribed to you and not using, and take it to a prescription recycling center, or take it to somebody who will take it from you. Don't flush it in the toilet because that's bad for the environment. But so starting with little things like that in homes. Then we've also gone to the whole other end of the spectrum of prevention and said, okay, well, we need to create policies that help us prevent inappropriate opioid distributions from happening. So we actually started working with our providers in the county and created a policy that can actually track back to who is the one that prescribed that particular opioid. Although, providers are in a place of wanting to make sure people are able to manage their pain, we also want to make sure that it's happening in a smart and a safe way. And most providers don't want to overprescribe pills to people who may not need it. So one of the ways in doing that is creating policies that are making it a little bit easier for providers to be mindful about how much to prescribe and to whom. So those are two examples of the work that we have done over the years. We've done take back days for prescriptions. Sometimes it's easier said than done because a lot of people don't know that a lot of pharmacies can't just take back Schedule C medication. You can't just randomly pop open a take back day. Bring me all of your narcotics, please.
Oh my God. In terms of stigma, so a couple of things come up. So specifically with addiction, part of mental health stigma, which really bugs me, and I know a lot of people that work in the field, is that we don't call positive tests by any type of judgment name except in addiction, where a positive urine is dirty and a negative is clean, as if when the symptoms of a disease are gone, you're pure. But if the symptoms are present, then there's something wrong with you. You're dirty. Your blood sugar is high. We don't call that sticky sweet or like something derogatory. And so just use of language can definitely help. And in terms of like mental health also, it's just, I don't know, it's not strictly the media, obviously, but the portrayal of bipolar and schizophrenia is usually associated with violence or something that's really negative, when in fact, so many people have it and are afraid to get help for it because of the stigma, and it keeps people out. I think that's part of it. Like a lot of people I know that a lot of patients that are sort of in the upper part of, maybe the top 20%ers, and, they only accept the diagnosis of mental health when they're in so much pain that there's no choice. Some reason they don't want it to enter their public life, their business life. I don't know. I find that human beings, doesn't matter what demographic you're from, also are reluctant, but it also seems like, and by the way, and I'm going to get back to my point, but like I've worked in rehabs that have treated the top percent. I prefer where I work now, which treats people of very low income and Medicaid, managed Medicaid, also, a little bit higher. And I do treat, like, I've got a lot of athletes that are active now in the professional arenas because I still have that, but I still have my private practice. But, I find like people who are very poor have more diagnoses. I don't know what your face says that you don't agree with it, but maybe it's just those who seek treatment. It seems like they've got everybody has like 4 or 5 mental health diagnoses. Not necessarily applicable, but it's almost like they're immune to it. And I don't know if you can speak to that. And I'm sure from where you're coming from, it's like trying to get people medicines and getting them compliant. But I feel like, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Can you just help me understand what you're saying? You're saying poor people of color have more diagnoses?
No, not of color. No. So no, I think with poor understanding, there's more labeling. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
I see. Okay.
So the education, there's not as much education. And so people will come in and say, hey, I'm on these meds. I don't know what for. They don't even know if they have the diagnosis. Right.
Okay. All right. You're really introducing a super complicated thing, right? So because part of what you're talking about is access to care is a major problem. So emergency rooms become people's primary care providers. And then once you get one diagnosis, that diagnosis may or may not stick with you. So then next time you go back and you tell them what is happening, you might get a different diagnosis. So that is one layer of problem.
Gotcha.
But then I think one of the other things you're introducing is actually what I call you can't unsee once you already see trauma. Right. So once you're a trauma-informed provider, then everything becomes about trauma, because then you just understand the brain and the body and the mind and how that then leads to the larger picture of everything else. Right. So addiction, in my mind, is part of that equation as well. Right. Like most people, some are born already addicted, but most babies aren't born thinking, let me figure out what chemical I'm going to introduce in my body. They're just waiting for the grownups to be taking care of them. And when the grownups don't take care of them the way they're supposed to, then we start the cycle of realistically trauma.
Have you ever seen an infant drink breast milk?
Oh yeah.
I'm an addict. I've never enjoyed anything in my life like that. I mean, they're just like,
right?
So they might not be addicted.
But they get to hear the heartbeat of the mama. They get to have this warm delivery system, and it's right there. And then they can look up and they see mom in her mirror neurons saying, I love you. I'm taking care of you, and I'm feeding you, and I'm keeping you safe.
Oh my God. I wish I had something in my world like that right now. That would be awesome.
If really what we're talking about is having healthy attachments at every age and how to prevent trauma, then moving into your positive interventions, we've got it. It is possible.
I wanted to ask you about your licensing. I forgot. You go to Hawaii?
Yeah.
California, Texas? Yeah. That is interesting to me. I almost worked in Kauai.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I love Kauai. I love all of Hawaii. I love wherever I am. My mom always said, bloom where you're planted, because we moved a lot. So I love wherever we go. Yeah. So I was licensed in California as a marriage family therapist and a licensed professional clinical counselor. Then I went for my doctorate in healthcare leadership. So I'm not a psychologist. My doctorate's in healthcare leadership. So I designed an app that we tested, and it decreases anxiety in 1 minute of exposure.
Wow.
Before an anticipatory stressor, but you can use it for anything. And it is based on EMDR, but there are lots of other techniques there to relax.
What is the app called?
It's called Got This, and it's on the App Store for iPhone and also Android. And you can also have the web-based version called gotthisapp.com.
Got this. Okay. I'm going to get Got This. I'm going to have gotten it.
Yay. I hope so. So then I got licensed in Texas because I'm from Texas, and because people kept asking me to do the psych evaluations and they were in Texas. And then, so again, one of my clients moved there and wanted me to do EMDR with him virtually. And then my sister, I have one sister that lives in Hawaii and one sister that lives in New Zealand. So I go back and forth to Hawaii a lot. And there is, as we are quickly learning, the access to care in Hawaii is extremely limited. And there are very few lens neurofeedback providers and very few EMDR providers. So I will sometimes go there, or they'll come here, or we'll do it virtually.
Okay, that's awesome.
So you were mentioning the relationship between addiction and trauma and basically poverty. And Nadine Burke-Harris wrote The Deepest Well. It's awesome if you haven't read it. And basically, everybody should be doing the ACEs for all reasons and for all socioeconomic status, because trauma doesn't discriminate.
Mm-hmm.
So ACEs is adverse childhood events or experiences.
Okay.
And it's just 10 questions of the most common childhood adversities or challenges or abuses that people often survive. So the more that people have, the more likely it is to have chronic disease, or including an increased risk of alcohol and other substance use. And then if you have scores above 5, the more likely it is for somebody to have poor health outcomes and shortened life expectancy up to 20 years.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. We got to get in there. It's, one of those unspoken, like, huge problems. So thanks for that. Are we ready?
Rapid fire.
Let's do it. So what is your favorite word?
So the two that popped off right quick were hope and inspiration.
And what is your least favorite word?
The word that popped up was hopeless. But it's more like a phrase. I can't is super annoying to me. Sorry.
Yeah. Don't think I can't, think I will. Mm-hmm. So what's your favorite sound?
Children laughing.
And what's your least favorite sound?
Yelling mean things to other people.
And what turns you on?
People striving towards something.
And what turns you off?
Poopy diapers, like somebody just sitting in the corner just moping.
Yeah, like got it. Yeah, that's awesome. If you could have done any other vocation, what do you think in another life you would have loved to have a go at?
So in my earlier brain, I was on a physician track, and I was actually afraid to take the MCATs. And I decided to get a master's instead, thinking that would be easier than studying and taking the MCATs. And so that's how I ended up developing my app, was to decrease test taking anxiety. And I tested it in kids, in 9th graders, before taking an algebra test. And it turned out it worked. It decreased their test taking anxiety in a minute before taking the algebra test.
Wow, that's really cool.
So if I had had my app before my MCATs, I might have been a physician.
Well, you're still a doc. And so what vocation do you think what vocation would you have loathed to do your whole life?
I'm not particularly good at, this is going to sound horrible, but I'm really not good at taking care of life that isn't breathing. Like, I'm really bad at keeping plants alive. I'm really bad at like scooping poop. I'm really bad at like doing things that require me to maintain what the beauty is of an environment. I'm really good at connecting to humans most times and about keeping that life alive, and on my pets and animals, and kind of surprised that the cat hasn't jumped through right now saying, "You will pet me."
Good sign. I was going to say then you wouldn't be a zookeeper, but probably you wouldn't be a horticulturalist. Probably would.
Yeah. Botanist. People give me flowers for my birthday and I'm like, oh, thank you. And I just watch them die. I'm not, I can't keep them alive.
Isn't that the point of flowers though? They sort of have a shelf life. I mean, no flowers live.
Cut flowers, but they'll give me like beautiful orchids and stuff.
Oh, right. Okay.
Give me death in a pot.
Maybe if they listen to this, they'll find another gift. Maybe they'll give you, Horticulture for Dummies book or something.
No, because that would require, my free reading is like neurofeedback for neurodevelopmental disorders. That's what I listen to as I run,
Oh yeah, me too. Okay. So for this next question, assuming there's a God, when you die, what would you like to hear coming out of God's mouth?
It's funny because if it were popcorn, the first thing that did come to my mind was, "I'm proud of you." Okay,
that's great. That's the right answer. All right, so now we'll go into the positive intervention. The positive intervention for today, everyone, quote is from Robert Fuller. Spirituality exists wherever we struggle with the issue of how our lives fit into the greater cosmic scheme of things. This is true even when our questions never give way to specific answers or give rise to specific practices such as prayer or meditation. We encounter spiritual issues every time we wonder where the universe comes from, why we are here, or what happens when we die. We also become spiritual when we are moved by values such as beauty, love, or creativity that seem to reveal a meaning or power beyond our visible world. An idea or practice is spiritual when it reveals our personal desire to establish a felt relationship with the deepest meanings or powers governing life. again, by Robert C. Fuller. So today's positive intervention is journal about any spiritual experiences you have had in your lifetime. What did they feel like? What did you learn from them? If you cannot recall any experience you would deem spiritual, journal about a time when you felt particularly connected to the world or the people around you. Can that connection serve as fertile ground upon which to build a concept of spirituality? So, Cio, I know you did this positive intervention. What was your experience like? Share that with us.
So since you introduced spirituality, actually in the previous last flash question, I actually want to change my answer to God telling me you were always good enough.
Okay.
And I feel like that is a spiritual connection that is a good place to launch from here, because I think that for me, it's easier to be connected with others and to feel spiritual when I'm connected with myself. And I've had a lot of spiritual experiences, and I think people who have worked with me in my practice sometimes feel it's a little whoosy who, but my first time that I noticed that I actually can feel spirits was when my grandmother was passing, and she was in Texas. I had just spent 10 days with her, and then I flew home, and that next day she had a massive stroke, and then later in that next day I flew back and she died. But during that time in between the day that I flew away and the day that I flew there, she was sending me all sorts of messages. And since then, I've had lots of people talk to me as they've either transitioned or even after they've passed. And so some of my clients will be in my office when their family members come into the office. And so we use their spiritual gifts of people from their past as part of their treatment plan. And I realize that you're not asking me about spirituality related to ghosts and angels and people that have passed. It just so happens to be a piece that I can't disconnect to how I see spirituality, because people are around all the time, even when they're passed. I'm standing in the house of my stepdaughter, whose husband was killed in the line of duty. He's everywhere in this house. And I'm watching the grandchildren until their mom gets back from their trip to Hawaii, her trip to Hawaii. For me, it's inseparable. Being able to feel on different levels is right now still a gift, because I only experience good things out of it. So I hope it stays that way.
That's awesome. So any non-spirit related spiritual experiences?
Every single time I connect with a client, right? Like, it's a major spiritual gift,
right,
that I get to look at your eyes and just be able to see how there's a little boy inside of there too that likes to smile and has happy experiences associated to, and probably can giggle and do all sorts of things that I can see beyond the smile on your screen, and also be able to hold the challenges that you've been able to make your way through and love the person that you have always been and the person you're becoming.
Sweet. Yes. Yeah. So, I generally share mine as well. I think the first one I had was at sleepaway camp, and I was about 11 or so. And I don't know why. I mean, it was a normal sleepaway camp, but for some reason, the counselor did a guided meditation and had us deep breathe and then imagine that we're leaving our body. And it worked. I felt like I was observing myself. And that was the first time that I experienced something greater than the physical world. I mean, I was exposed to religion and the dogma and that type of thing, but it wasn't a feeling I had. That was the first one. And then another meaningful one, and I've had tons, like you, connection and like seeing somebody's soul or experiencing them is definitely spiritual. Doesn't happen frequently enough, I guess not as much for me as you, but when my brother passed, he came to me while I was asleep. And my understanding was that happened when I was asleep, because if it happened when I was awake, it would freak me out. And it was like within 5 days of him passing, and I woke up. So he was like my hero, best friend, everything. I mean, it wrecked me because he was young. We were young. And I woke up sort of okay, calm, and I felt guilty because it was passive. It wasn't like I worked through my grief. I mean, I felt grief. I was in the moment, but I just know that it was him and he's okay. So to me, that was another like big thing. And yeah, I mean, I get goosebumps, but I read somewhere about sort of coincidences and how things things that are spiritual opportunities, people can define, pass off as, oh, it's just a coincidence, or it's a brain it's just my brain interpreting certain things. that just doesn't explain why it happens. That might explain how, but it doesn't explain why. And that's the spiritual part. So yes, you're nodding. For you guys out there that are listening, she's digging it. So yeah, she's nodding.
Digging it. I'm digging it. I'm kind of like, isn't it so much better to believe in magic than to have to, to be able to own that there's still a sense of wonder and it's okay to not know the why also?
Yeah.
It's okay.
I mean, the Greeks knew it. That's why the Oracle at Delphi always gave answers that were mysterious, because they knew, if you can't, life's nebulous. If you can't make order and create your meaning, you're in trouble. Yeah. You can,
right.
We'll never know why. So thank you so much for giving us this time, Cio. It was an honor to meet you, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same way. And I hopefully can attend your Laredo gala, if that's, I don't remember what it's called. It would be virtual because I'm not going to Laredo, but yeah. So thank you again. And for those listening, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So the easiest is by email, Cio, spelled CIO, at beitfoundation.org. And I'm happy to chat whenever. Just know that my schedule is kind of crazy, so you might get an email at midnight. I'm just really grateful that you had me on today, and what great questions. And I love that you do positive recovery. This is awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, man. Guests like you, I'll definitely invite back. So thanks again. And thank you everybody for listening. And until next time, flourish.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Positive Recovery MD. Don't forget to visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to get your daily positive intervention sent straight to your inbox. Be sure to subscribe to Positive Recovery MD on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts to receive an automatic download when a new episode drops. And as always, if you or someone you know needs help, visit positiverecovery.com or call 877-4-SOBRIETY, which is 877-476-2743. We are here to help.